Yes.
So I'm actually really new to your books. I've only read your books about 3 months now. And
Heretic.
But I was really...
How many have you read? I'm curious.
I'm at Siege of Darkness.
These people read too fast. I can't keep up with you. You'll catch me.
You know, it helps me through college. But,
Oh, that's good to know.
At Sea of Swords, should I start from the Hunter's Trilogy or from the Sellswords Trilogy?
I would read them in the order of, I would read right up to, I think, probably Legacy, Starless Night, maybe even Siege of Darkness, and then I would read the Cleric Quintet.
Yeah.
And then I'd come back to Passage to Dawn after the Cleric Quintet. And then I would start with Silent Blade and Spine of the World, and I would probably go the Servant of the Shroud, but as soon as I went to Servant of the Shroud, I'd go to Sellswords. I'd finish that series, then come back in and catch up the rest of the way. But one of the things about the Dark Elf books, and this was done intentionally, by the way, because it's more the way I think. If you read like Robert Jordan, right, you can't pick up the 7th book on Wheel of Time and start reading it if you haven't read the first 6. You can't do it. You can't pick up the 4th George Martin book, 5th George Martin book, if it ever comes out, without going back and reading Game of Thrones and all of those. In the Dritz books, you really can pick up any of them. And I've done that on purpose. I mean, Gauntlgrim is going to be, I hope, a good jumping-on point for people, and hopefully they'll like the characters enough to go back. But I used more the model of Fritz Leiber with his Fafhrd and Grey Mouser books, which are phenomenal, by the way, some of the best out there. Or James Bond or Sherlock Holmes, if you think of those. What I've really done is created this group of characters, and I'm just following them down the road from one adventure to the other. And I can't think of any Dark Elf book that you couldn't pick up and read as your first Dark Elf book. But I would do it that way, though, the way I told you. Yeah.
Bob, I got one for you. Can you go into detail about your D&D adventure with Larry Elmore and Ed Greenwood?
It's on videotape. I mean, it's it's on YouTube. It's not videotape, I guess. They don't do that anymore, do they? I'm dating myself. It was great because Larry hasn't played D&D in like 20 years. And anytime you're in the room with Ed, as long as he's not sitting right next to you, it's great. Because he's out of his mind. The funny thing about that, though, is I was playing Oliver de Burrows. I was playing a rogue named Oliver de Burrows. And the way it worked out, the way the game played out, was perfect for Oliver. Oliver is always the reluctant hero who steps in when he thinks you've won. He's Sir Robin, okay? He's another, he's never going to lead unless he knows it's safe. And that's exactly what I did in the game. And at one point, I was going to do something, it's called an action point, where you get like a second attack. And I said, action point, the whole crowd yells, action point! And then I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And everybody started like booing me. And you don't understand. You don't understand. If I hit him again, he'll hit me. I don't want to get hit. But they didn't understand. But if you watch the way that game finished, I went running with Oliver, and I ran right by the worst monster on the board, the real big bad guy at the end. So he gets an attack at me because I came too close to him as I was going by him to get behind him, because that's where you want to hit him, right? And he criticaled me. He hit me with a natural 20, which would have killed me, probably. Except I was a halfling, and halflings get a thing called second chance. So I used that, and then he missed me miserably. I ran behind him, I hit him hard, and then I said, and so then Chris Perkins was going to the next guy, and I went, action point. Now I'm using my action point. And I rolled the die, and it was a critical, and I killed the monster. And that's so Oliver. That's so Oliver de Burrows. He always finds somehow to win something where he should have lost. So we had fun. And of course, you're sitting at a table with Ed and Larry and Matt James and Chris Perkins, and it's hard to not have fun. And the guys that came up from the audience and played in with us were awesome too. I mean, it was just fun. It's just a good time. That's what gaming's supposed to be. It's why I still do it. You know? Yeah. Oliver wins. He always does. Yes.
You've mentioned that you like to explore several characters that you've written about. Do you have any desire to explore Athergate's story? Can you sell stories?
Oh, he's cool. He's a big player in the book that just came out. I'll leave it at that. Athergate's pretty cool because he's nasty, but he's nasty for a reason. He has good reason to not be a good guy all the time. And yeah, I like him. I like dwarves. I always like my dwarves. They provide comic relief, but there's always a lot more to them than that. You know. Any other questions before we sign books? Yeah.
Now, you went back to the first edition module, and you wrote that one book when they were in with the king, and you know what I'm talking about?
The Bloodstone Lands?
Yes.
Yes. The Doug
Was
Niles.
that your idea, or was it the first?
I had wanted to set books in the Bloodstone Lands. The Cleric Quintet was supposed to be the Monk Quintet, set in the Bloodstone Lands, but because the game had changed to 2nd edition, there were no monks in 2nd edition. I remember the phone call. I had finished up the Dark Elf trilogy, and they wanted something different from me, and so I came up with the Monk Quintet. It was going to be set at the Monastery of the Yellow Rose in Damara. And then I got a phone call saying, well, you can't do this because we're going to 2nd edition and there are no monks in 2nd edition. And this had followed a big fight about Artemis and Trary that I'll tell you about in a minute. But I'm like, well, but I really want to write about a monk. I think it'll be cool. You know, it's kind of the whole kung fu show, which I used to love when I was younger. You know, I want to write about a monk. He said this real disciplined, no, there are no monks. We're not going to feature a monk in 5-book series when they're not even in the game anymore. I said, well, all right, I'll come up with something. They said, no, we really want you to do a cleric. I said, cleric? I said, the cleric is the last guy who comes to the gaming table. He says, hey guys, can I play? What do you need? As he's sitting there, he says, you're a cleric. Shut up, sit down, and heal me. But somehow it worked. Somehow it worked. So I've been wanting to go there forever. And they wouldn't let me because Doug Niles had done those modules and was thinking of doing books there. But by the time I was doing the Trary's story, Doug was busy with a lot of other stuff and wasn't going there, and they said, I'd just go there. So I did, and I had a blast. And those characters that are around him, most of them, King Gareth and all of them, they're from those modules that Doug and his gaming group came up with. And they were a blast to play with, absolutely. The other thing that happened in 2nd edition, I was writing Homeland when 2nd edition came out, so the first Dritz book. This is the 4th book I wrote in the Realms. And I got this phone call from Jeff Grubb, who was the coordinator of the Realms. And he says, Bob, how are you going to kill Intrary? Now, Intrary had shown up in the last part of the Crystal Shard. He was in Streams of Silver, where he really started getting cool. And then in Halfling's Gem, where I really started to like this guy. And then I get this phone call. I'm writing a prequel book. How are you going to kill Intrary? And I'm like, well, Jeff, I'm writing a book set 80 years ago. He isn't even born yet. You want me to kill his mother? How do I kill Intrary? And he's like, well, all the assassins have to die. I said, what do you mean all the assassins? Assassins are no longer in the game. 2nd edition is getting rid of assassins. All their souls are being sucked up by this evil god who's using them for power. I'm like, oh, great. And he's like, but we like Intrary. I said, I like Intrary too. He says, yeah, so we're going to let you kill him. I said, I'm not killing him. And we went back and forth fighting about this for about 20 minutes. I'm like, why do I need to... I don't understand. Why does he need to die? Bob, there are no assassins in the Forgotten Realms anymore. I said, why does he need to die? This is crazy. I'm writing books. I'm not writing your game. And he says, no, there are no assassins in the realms anymore. And finally, after about 20 minutes, I said, he's not an assassin. There's a long pause, and Jeff said, what do you mean? I said, he's a fighter thief who takes money to kill people. And Jeff said, we can do that. And Trary lives. I got time for 1 or 2 more. Anyone? Yeah.
You talked about doing prequels for other characters. What about Ivan and Pickle?
Ivan and Pickle. Oh, God. I wrote all those books with Pickle in them and retained my sanity, and you want me to continue. Thanks a lot. I actually had once thought of doing a book with Ivan and Pickle and Vander. Remember Vander from the Cleric Quintet?
Very vaguely.
The Furbolg giant with the Ring of Regeneration. I had thought about doing a book with them. I don't know. There's so many things I want to do, and who knows? I mean, I'm still hoping I can do the Jarlaxle Zaknafane book. I'm not getting any younger here.
I'd be more excited about that, but
Yeah. I'm always amazed at how many people like pickle. He doesn't even talk. Huh?
He says do that.
He says, ooh, oi, me brother, doodad, boom, and shalala. That's the extent of his vocabulary. He says so much. I had a letter from a guy saying, I think this is the best developed character you've ever had. I almost retired on the spot. Yeah.
One question. I've been reading your books for probably 20 years now. I'm dating myself and saying that. I look forward to them every time you release one and the companions and reading about them and seeing where they're at. And my question is why?
No spoilers.
Why?
Forgotten Realms advanced 100 years. There's nothing I can do about that. It's their sandbox.
Oh, I'm gonna cry.
140-year-old people don't fight well. Now,
I mean, out of all of them, you could have picked some.
It's a personal journey. The story tells you what to do as you're going along.
Yeah.
It's not fun sometimes. It hurts like hell. Have you read Demon Wars? Okay, for any of you who are going to read Demon Wars, I've got this piece of advice. Don't get attached to anybody. Because it's a bloodbath. The story tells you what to do. And I always tell people, like when people were ready to, when I was getting death threats from Star Wars fans, and I was, for a certain Wookiee, I always say to people, would anyone even know Joan of Arc's name if she hadn't been killed? That's, as long as it's heroic, man, But anyway, enough of that spoiler talk. Yes, go ahead.
I know you're subject to the timeline of Forgotten Realms and how they're advancing the gaming systems and
Sure.
whatnot. How much freedom do you have to go back in time?
Right now, not much. I mean, if I really pushed it, I could. But here's the thing. Wizards really wants the authors. They're not doing that many books anymore. They're not doing as many as they used to, in case you haven't noticed. And that's true for every publisher now. They want the novels to support the change in the world so that people aren't confused. It's a legitimate point. I work for them. They pay the bills. And it's a contract made in good faith on both ends. So if I push hard enough, I can get away with pretty much anything I want. They don't tell me what to write, except they wouldn't let me do a monk. And of course, if you notice, even in the Cleric Quintet, Catherly's wife is a monk. I win in the end, I told you that. So I could, but right now that's not what they want. And I understand it. And I want to find out what these new realms are all about too. I mean, because I really have to familiarize myself with them if I'm going to be writing books in them. Even I even have to play 4th edition, and I'm a 1st edition player. But that's the way it is. So we let them go.